with 2 glass doors in the front, and you could literally walk in between the church and the masjid and touch them like this. Anyone doesn't believe me, go to Greenville, South Carolina, look at the masjid. You can almost touch both of them just like this. He said, yeah, it's right there. I said, I've never, at first I was shocked, like I've been living across the street from all these crazy Muslims all my life. I said, I never knew. And he told me to go to Jummah, and I asked him what time. He said he would meet me there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. So I said, okay. I went on Friday, and I'm waiting outside for him. I'm not going inside. That's not happening. And I'm seeing all these people going in, and at this time, it was a predominantly Indo-Paki Arab masjid. Anyone who went in was not American, period. And I did not see even one African-American going there. And I did see one, and then when he went in, I heard him talking in a dialect that I realized he was probably from Africa. And I said, he's not American. So I'm not going. I'm waiting, and I'm standing outside, sitting on the church steps, and the imam pulls up and parks right in front of me, who I had no idea he was the imam. But he got out, and he asked me, am I waiting for someone, this, that, and the other? And I explained to him. He said, oh, yeah, we know this brother. You don't see him that much, but we know who he is. He said, I'm glad you came. He was a very, very nice, gentle young man. And he invited me into the mosque, and I kind of wanted to wait on my friend, but I didn't want, at the same time I didn't want to tell this man I don't want to go in. So I went in, and they put me in the back and gave me a chair anyway. And I said, I came to sit on the floor. And they gave me a chair anyway, and all of these people are piled up in front of me. And there's no Americans here, and I'm starting to wonder, if this is a setup, because it's starting to smell like a setup to me, because in my mind I'm like, you've been set up before, and this seems kind of like this. So, and I'm starting to think in my head, scenarios, a young mind at play. I said, this other guy, my friend, he probably was in the same situation like me, and he probably made a deal with them to get out, as long as he brought other Americans and tricked them into coming to the mosque, so they could do their jihad after Jummah and get their 70 virgins. So I'm sitting here, and there's all these people in front of me, and then there's a curtain with all these people behind me making noise, and I have no idea who's back here. So I'm stuck in the middle of this. I hear that it's some women, but I don't, there's a curtain, I have no idea. So I'm like, there's something very odd about what's going on right here. I'm like, just let me make it. I'm starting to look for the exit. I'm like, calculating how many people are between me and the exit. I know some martial arts, so I said I'm going to hit a couple of them and I'm out. And then the imam came, and I just now realized that he was the imam because he got up on the minbar, and they started to call the adhan. And I said, okay, that man seemed nice. He seemed genuinely nice, so I felt a little more comfort. And then he got up after the adhan, and he started his khutbah. Inna alhamdulillah nahmaruhu wa I said, oh my God. I said, I bet you he's talking about me. And he's being forceful. He was getting loud and banging on the minbar, and he's pointing in my direction. I'm like, oh man, I gotta get out of here really quick. I said, well, I'm going to take my chances with the women behind me. I'm going through the curtain. And then he started to, when he got done with his Arabic tirade, he started to explain it. That verily all praise belongs to Allah alone, or God alone, and Him do we worship, and Him do we seek help and assistance. We seek refuge with Him from the evil that lies. He explained what he said in Arabic, and it sounded to me so beautiful. It was very, very beautifully prosed, what he said, and I wanted to know where he got that. I said, where did he get that? Because it was only about God and about the nature of ourselves. All of us should know that beginning of the khutbah, and he quoted the 3 verses from the Quran. O you who believe, fear God as ye should be feared and do not die, and instead of a state of submission to Islam. He was a very wise man, because he translated everything. It was almost as if he knew I was there and translated everything for me. I remember to this day what the khutbah was about. And I don't know if he did it because I was there, or if that was his already planned khutbah, but it's almost as if it was meant for me. The khutbah was that, the title of it was that the forgiveness of Allah is open to anyone at any time, at any place, no matter what, unless they have committed shirk. And the prose of the khutbah was a very long hadith. That some of you will know. And just to make it short, it was the hadith where the Rasulullah ﷺ met Angel Gabriel or Angel Jibreel, and Angel Jibreel was telling them to tell him that if the Muslims commit this certain sin, to tell them that Allah would forgive them. And every time he would tell the Muslims, they would say, okay, well then what about this sin? And he would go back and meet with Angel Jibreel, and he would go back and come back and say, tell them that Allah will forgive him for that. And this discourse happened, for many different sins. And then finally Angel Jibreel alayhi salam said, tell them that Allah has said, no matter what they do, even if their sins are compiled, like the oceans are from the east to the west, as long as they have not associated a partner with Allah, tell them that Allah will forgive them. And I remember he told me that, or he said that, that the door of repentance to God is open as long as you have not seen the angel of death or the sun hasn't risen from the west. I didn't really understand the sun risen from the west thing at that time. But, and he said that, God's forgiveness has to come from God alone. And this was the whole premise of his khutbah, was on forgiveness and tawbah. And I was saying to myself, these are all of the same concepts that I had formulated through reading the religious scriptures myself. And I'm asking myself, where did he get this stuff from? Where did he get all this? And he started using names like, he used the name Ibrahim alayhi salam, he used the name Musa, and I'm like, he translated it to Abraham and Moses. I'm like, where did he, where is he getting these? These are names from the Bible, I know these people. And so after the khutbah, they started lining up for the prayer. And I got apprehensive because everybody's getting up in front of me and blocking my exit from the door. And so I guess one guy in the back saw me, and because I had to move back a little bit, he said, we're about to pray. And I said, pray to who? And he said, to God. I said, which one? And he said, the one that created the heavens and earth. The same one that's in the Bible, the only creator of the heavens and earth, the only God. I said, yes, I know him. And so the Imam started to pray, and when he recited the Quran, I know it sounded very intriguing. I had no idea what it was. But then when I saw Muslims bow and prostrate on the floor, verses and verses of every religious book that I had ever read started ringing off in my head, that this was the way men of God prayed. And the first thing that I could think of in my mind was, this is worship. That's what I said to myself. This is not prayer, because prayers are asking God for something. These people are worshiping God. So I said to myself that you've written this religion off way too easily. I thought I was a much more open-minded person than that, and I was ashamed of myself that I had written it off with just one little book. I had put all these studies into the other religions. I read this one thing about Islam and was done. So I went to the Imam after Jummah. He talked to me, and I would have to say that I was probably a little bit rude with him. And I've asked him to forgive me. I saw him a few years later. I said, you got to forgive me for the first time you saw me. Because he started telling me, would you like to know a little bit more about... He had a very heavy accent. He was an Egyptian brother. Would you like to know a little bit more about Islam? He tried to give me some pamphlets. I said, no. I don't want any of this right here. I said, do you have a book? This is what I wanted to know. Do you have a book? Can you give me... He said, yes, we have a book. I said, it's called the Quran. I said, can I read it? Is it in English? Can I read it? He said, sure, you can read it. And then he tried to explain it to me a little bit, how it came by. I said, nah, just give me the book, because the book should speak for itself. So I took the Quran home, and on Friday night I started to read it, because this is a book I had never seen before. And I was very interested. So I went home and I opened the Quran, and I read the Fatiha. It seemed to me kind of like the Lord's Prayer. It was a little similar to what I found in the Bible. But then I started to read Surah Al-Baqarah. I started to read Surah Al-Imran, and I started to see names that I had seen before. I started to see names like Abraham, Moses, David, Jesus, Yahya, John the Baptist, Zechariah, Mary. And I said, I know all of these names, but there was something different about these people in this book. The prophets that I found in the Bible were people that were deplorable, of not very good character. These same men in the Quran were someone who were at the highest echelon of moral character and moral fiber. They were someone that was an example to be followed because they lived the message that they preached. Therefore, they were able to be followed and emulated. So I read all of these chapters, and I read the story of Jesus, peace be upon him, because when I saw the name Jesus first, that really intrigued me. I wanted to see, what does this book have to say about Jesus? And I read the story in Ali Imran, and I read the story in Surah Maryam, and it was it was more beautiful than anything I had ever read in the New Testament, or any nativity story that I had ever heard. It was more beautiful than that times 10. I remember the only thing that I could capture